And now I'm going to turn it over to Mandy for the presentation.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for coming. We're just going to start slow because I'm sure people are coming in and out of different sessions and may have needed a potty break or a drink break. So I get that. My name is Mandy Chapman. I am the regional manager for Care Portal of Luzerne and Wyoming counties. And Care Portal is a technology platform that connects child-serving professionals with churches and individuals in the community to help serve kids and families in crisis. So that is what I do. That is my job. But on a personal note, my husband and I have been married for 15 years. We have 7 children and 2 grandchildren. And we have been foster parents for 12 years. So we have been living the foster care life and living in that space for quite some time. And it was actually through working with Luzerne County Children and Youth and working in our community that I really desired to work towards prevention and get the community involved in ways to help kids and families stay out of child welfare, which sounds probably a little bit weird because my family represents 5 families that are no longer together. But I also understand that it's an honor and it's a gift that I get to receive. But there are so many families in our area that are struggling that have the potential to stay together. And with the proper supports and connections, that is a possibility. So my heart is really for prevention. So this is a really personal topic to me, but I do not have all the answers. I have a lot of experience, but not as much as some of you. So what I did over the last several months was I really took some time to interview and ask a lot of questions. Some people call it like a listening tour. For me, I just call it interviewing. A lot of individuals who work within our community and who work in the different jobs that you have in mental health, drug and alcohol, juvenile justice, and child welfare. I really wanted to get a better grasp of what they felt were the real needs of our community. What were the things that really were affecting the families that they work with, the children they work with, the individuals they work with? And so, what we're going to be talking about today are not just my ideas of what needs to help, what needs to be better, changed, any of that. These are collaborative ideas from individuals like yourselves. Some of you maybe even are on the call that I have spoken with. And so I wanted just to start with this is not my idea of like what needs to change and how things need to be run, but more of an ongoing conversation of how we can work together and really focus our efforts better. So we're going to start out with what the first thing I asked the individuals that I spoke with from the different departments were, what are the 3 major barriers that affect the families and the individuals that you work with? So I'm going to pull up the PowerPoint. I'm skipping a little bit. All right. So this is what they had to say. And right now the chat box is available, and I really want you guys to take advantage. I am not one of those people that loves to just hear themselves talk. I want this to be something that is really interactive and that you have the opportunity to share your thoughts on. All of the individuals that I spoke with shared that these were the 3 major barriers of the children and families that they work with. Now, they are not in actual order. They are completely interchangeable depending on who I talk to. Someone may have said poverty is the #1 barrier that my families struggle with. But number 2 would be lack of parental and natural community supports. Another one would say trauma would be #1. So those are all interchangeable. But if you could take a look at those and really think through the individuals and the families that you work with, I would love to hear if you're like, yes, absolutely, those are the #1s. Or say, you know what, I think there's a different one that you missed and I would love to hear it. because like I said, I did this as like a learning experience and more to really engage those who are working in this space, because we don't all have the right answer or the answer, but we all have different experiences and we want to be able to hear them. So if you could add in the chat box what you think are some of the major barriers, or just give like a thumbs up, yet like, yes, those would be the top 3, hands down. It's going to take just a minute. People are like, whoa, I'm not ready for this yet. Anyone? Amy, is anyone responding? They're all on the bathroom break.
I haven't seen anything yet.
All right. Well,
I don't have
maybe
the option to
everybody
pull up
doesn't
the
have the chat
box.
option.
all right. Share your thoughts then. Feel free.
I personally think that those 3 nail it.
Okay. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Some are coming into the chat now.
Okay.
Do you want me to
Yeah.
read them? Can you see it?
Yeah, go ahead. It would be great if you could read them.
Okay. Gabrielle says, I think these are great, but also a lack of knowing where to go to obtain resources.
Okay, that's awesome.
And Mary Elizabeth says, I definitely see a lot of these barriers, but in my area, a huge barrier is language. We have a large population of Spanish-speaking clients who cannot be seen regularly due to limitations.
I never thought of that one. Thank you for sharing that one. Anyone else have anything they want to add, or those pretty much nail most of it? All right, we are going to move on. So I want to just touch on one of the things that through my experience has been unbelievably just glaring of an issue has been trauma. And I realize that right now, especially in Luzerne and Wyoming counties, we are trying to be more of a trauma-informed society, and I think that is just phenomenal. I think most of the people that are here are working in the community and probably have done some different trainings on the ACEs scores. And if you don't know what ACEs are, they're adverse childhood experiences. If you have never taken the test or have heard about that, please just like say, hey, yeah, that's me. Because I'd love to see like how many people are not getting this education, who is not receiving this information, because it really is powerful. I'm sure many people would probably write in the chat, this stuff is amazing. It's really helped me understand my clients a little bit better. I know for me, our oldest daughter, she moved in with us a month before her 18th birthday, and we struggled to find out how to really help her. She was in and out of different drug and alcohol rehabilitations and struggled with mental illness. And just recently, she's 23 now, just recently I said, hey, I want you to take this test. And so she took it, and I took it for her, like with her in mind, just trying to like get a grasp on it because I didn't know how long it would take her to take it. And I ended up getting 6 for her, which, you know, anybody who knows the ACE test, that's pretty high. It's only 10 questions and it's 1 point per question. So, you know, it wasn't an answer to like end all answers. It wasn't like it all of a sudden she made sense, but it really helped us to get a better grasp on what was hurting her and where she had come from, and really to have a better understanding of what kind of help she needed. She needed trauma help. And so that was really powerful for us to have that tool. And then I know that they do this, it's like a resiliency test as well, which I think is really cool to show like how resilient you are. Those ACE studies are just phenomenal. But one of the things that when we first started, probably about 10 years ago, obviously we've been foster parents for about 12, but I'd probably say 10 or 11 years ago, I remember feeling so helpless, not having any idea how to help these kiddos that were coming into our home. And I just remember just crying and not sure what to do. Like there was eating issues and there were outbursts and just all of these things that I just didn't know, I wasn't prepared for. So I always call myself, like I say I could have a doctorate in Google studies. So I would just start Googling everything I could to try to help these kids that were in our home. And I mean, I was studying cortisol effects on the brain before I knew anything about trauma or, how the brain develops. I was studying that stuff before anybody I knew was even talking about it. So, to have these studies out there that are really quick and short and anybody can take them, it's such a phenomenal tool. And it just really gives us a better perspective working with our clients and working with those in our community that we're trying to serve. So that was one of the major things that I just wanted to touch on was trauma. And let's see if I can get over here. And this one just really gives a good idea. Adverse childhood experiences. All of these things are different effects that can happen when children have different adverse childhood experiences. The community environments affect it, but also home life affects it. So as we are talking about trauma, as we're talking about poverty, you can look at this, even just the poor housing quality. Did somebody have a question? I'm sorry. Somebody talking? Is somebody trying to ask a question? Because if you are, I can't hear you.
We don't want them to throw them away. We get to be in charge.
Amy, were you able to catch that?
Okay.
Somebody needs to mute themselves.
Okay. I wasn't sure if someone was trying to ask a question, but I heard chatting. Okay. So just touching on this with the adverse childhood experiences, I'm sure that a lot of you know about this, but I feel like it's really important that before we talk about what prevents or what we could do to prevent these things, we talk about what the consequences are, essentially. So this was another one that really just kind of stood out to me, and I know in all of your different fields, this would make sense. Former foster youth are much more likely than the general public to do these different things. And as I was looking through that, one of the things that really jumped out to me was former foster youth having setbacks in education. This was something that I was very aware of, and I knew in my mind that these things happened, but our oldest son and his wife also have chosen to be foster parents, and they had a little girl, and I was at their house. We were working with her, doing her homework, and I remember she was getting very frustrated, and I was trying to help her the best I could, and my daughter-in-law ended up coming in, and she said, "You need to understand, you got to give yourself a lot more grace. You went to 4 different homes and 4 different schools last year." And so, to really have that just kind of be punched in the face, like, wow, this is a young girl where addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, those foundations of school had been broken 4 times. And then you think of the trauma of moving 4 different houses, getting to know 4 different families, all of these different moves. So sometimes I look at this stat and I think you could probably interchange former foster youth and say youth with over 3 or 4 ACE points, and just say, like, these are the things that could be outcomes of that. And I also look at this and I think, look at how we can work together. There's drug and alcohol right here that is affected by trauma, or former foster youth. I feel like those sometimes can be interchangeable with foster youth, usually ultimately have some traumas. So you have drug and alcohol dependency. You also have crime, and then you have mental health. You also have the school systems, homelessness. So all of those systems, all of those community resources can work together. Those are some things that we can say, hey, these are some things that can overlap. These are different ways that our community, we're already working with the same people. So how do we work better together? And so that is one of the just touching on just those couple things and how they overlap and where they overlap, I want to now talk more about prevention. Again, these are not my brilliant ideas. These are some of my experiences, but also some of your experiences or your colleagues' experiences. You know, some of the people that I talk to have worked in their space for 20, 30, 40 years. Like, they have a wealth of knowledge. And so these are some things that, as we're going to be talking through, again, please put your comments and your questions in the chat box, because I'd love to hit them up when we're kind of wrapping this up. But as we move back into the prevention side, as we've just talked about some of the causes, I really want to focus on prevention and some creative ideas that we could really work together as a community, because we are better together. There is never going to be an empty system. Never. I mean, there's always going to be somebody who needs help and support, but there's also so many resources, so many people that have caring hearts, or people who are working in the space that genuinely care about their clients. And so I want to kind of have the next little bit of time that we have together to really focus on what we can do together, what are some overlaps, and what are some really, really practical, basic things that we can do to prevent trauma, kids going into care, families staying together, all of those things, poverty, those three major barriers that we talked about before. So as I interviewed many people, again, these were some of the ideas and some of the main themes that stood out. And so I want you to just kind of be processing, thinking through it, but also writing down questions. If you completely disagree with something, again, I want to hear it, because these are just ideas. They're not, you should do this. This is what will help. You know, these are just, again, suggestions. And, you know, one of us doesn't have all the answers, but together we really could make a big difference. So I'm going to pull up the slide talking about what was one of the first things that these individuals shared. So prevention priority number 1 is what I call this. These are some great community ideas. The first one is create new community partnerships, share knowledge and resources. These are really neat when we think of different agencies or we think of different nonprofits in our community. We all have different educational tools, knowledge, resources that we could essentially share with somebody else maybe working in the same space. I also wanted to kind of give a really practical example too of the second one, connecting with other community groups and clubs, service organizations, churches, nonprofits to see what additional services are available for your clients. One of the things that I found through our years of foster care is that my husband and I really genuinely cared about the birth parents that we worked with. But it was very limiting when we were also caring for their children, and some of the situations were not safe for us to really get highly involved, or it was just a little uncomfortable or awkward. But it was really difficult when they were going to parenting classes and they were going to drug and alcohol counseling and they were attending counseling appointments, different things like that. But really what they needed is somebody to really mentor them and get involved in their lives. And unfortunately, we both felt like that could not be us, given the current situation. But it was really difficult to then say, well, who would I recommend them to? What kind of nonprofits are there? What kind of mentorship programs are there? Are there any mom groups or dad groups out there that maybe a church is running that I could recommend for them to go to? So it was a really slightly awkward situation where I wanted to help more, but I felt very limited on who I could connect with. So that was just a really simple opportunity or simple example of just how we could reach out to the community for a little bit more deeper engagement. And now we actually, one of our mamas, she is actually extremely healthy now, doing wonderful. And even just our limited encouragement to her, our limited follow-ups with her really have made a difference. And so it's quite amazing to just even see how it has been many years, probably about 10 years, but she's clean, she's mentally stable, she is a productive member of society, and she's raising her youngest son. And I just think that's so neat. But she would tell me how she would go to these different groups, which I didn't know about, in her area because I didn't live in that area. But so that's an example of how we can reach out to different community groups to maybe add different supports to your clients. Finding other agencies and organizations that are working with the same demographic and ask them how to help or collaborate with them. Like I said, there's tons of resources out there. There's tons of volunteers. It's just hard to get our hands on them. So, working with the homeless population, for example, there are some incredible organizations doing great work out there. If we could collaborate and learn from each other, there's plenty of individuals who are homeless that we could all work together and everyone could be served. And the last thing I think is really very, very important, identifying key leaders within the community and inviting them to tour your facility and invite them to trainings that might be valuable for their work. One of the things that I'm finding working with the agency side and then also with the church and community side is that a lot of our churches and community leaders are not educated on the major barriers. I even had an individual say to me, how can you tell me that transportation is an issue? I live across from a low-income housing facility and there's tons of cars over there. And I thought, okay, that is valid, that from a distance you would see that should not be a barrier. But the reality is that transportation is an issue, and anyone who's working in the community knows that. So it was an opportunity for me to teach her what the barriers are, and one of the effects of poverty is the lack of transportation. And so just taking those opportunities to invite leaders to tour your facility. We had a training that we had a part of at Children and Youth, and we invited some key community leaders. And it was interesting that I don't think any of them had ever stepped foot into Children and Youth. And it was, you could tell they were extremely nervous, but it was an open door because once they did it once, then it's not so scary. So it was a really neat opportunity, and there's some incredible trainings, just like the trauma trainings that we have the opportunity to be a part of. A lot of our community leaders aren't engaging in that. So that would be a really neat idea, an opportunity where you can build some relationships and also educate people a little bit better. The last one, I just wanted to share. These were obviously some main things that families in poverty were struggling with, but I'm also seeing that a lot of times we say, oh, we just need a system for that, or we need a program for that. But maybe we need both. We need a little bit of program and system, and we need a little bit of community. And I think I'm speaking just from my experience, and I could be very wrong, so call me out if I am, is that I see a lot of individuals and people working in the, in drug and alcohol or mental health, or like in the agency side of things, and they say, we need another system for this. I actually spoke to an individual and they said, transportation is such an issue. We need another system. We need a job or some way for a transportation service. And I said, okay, yeah, I get that. But what if we also had a team of volunteers that would provide rides for individuals? And in that, by having to drive a mom and a child to an appointment in Danville or Philadelphia, now they're in the car 4 hours plus the time of the appointment, and there's that opportunity for connection. When I think of a system, I think of, okay, a transportation service. So you have paid staff and you have someone who does that service. But with volunteers, there's an opportunity for a deeper connection, without the limit of, well, I'm not allowed to do that, I'm on the clock, or the lack of, once that service is done, then it's done. But with a volunteer, there's that opportunity for those natural community supports. So with parenting classes, again, like I learned to be a better parent because of play dates. And so, thinking of, we need parenting classes. Absolutely, we need parenting classes. But maybe thinking outside the box, where could we, what's already happening in our community that we could encourage families to get involved with, where we see families that are struggling. Well, hey, there's this group over here. I'll go with you the first time, but I think you really should get involved over here. Counseling, obviously, I'm a huge supporter of counseling. We need that. But I also think of the community supports. Grief Camp, Hillside Farms does an incredible job with that. So, those are just some thinking beyond what we have to recommend or what we see as the available resource. Thinking of the community side, all of those are opportunity for deep and personal relationships to be built. And so that is ultimately the goal, is that we don't just leave it as an interaction where I provided a service and we're done. It's not, there has that opportunity for so much more. Free items, which of course we need, especially now. Food insecurity is such a growing need in all across the world right now. But understanding that, beyond just this immediate crisis, that where can we build from there, that it's not just we can't sustain just giving free food. Where can we go from there? So the community stores and gardens where individuals can serve and give back, earn items, and obviously grow community. The last thing that I want to touch on, and then we just really want to take the next little bit to hear your thoughts and your perspectives, is the low-income housing and reduced childcare, those types of things. Single moms tend to be the ones that are falling the most through the cracks as far as poverty. And my heart is just so for that single mom who's trying real hard to raise her kids and really just do the best she can, but oftentimes they're living just above poverty. And so a lot of those things like reduced housing or reduced cost childcare, they're not available because the mom is making too much, or she just has too many resources and she doesn't get those additional supports. So it's oftentimes one medical bill away from poverty, potentially losing her children, homelessness, all of those things. And so thinking through what are some creative ways that we can do to really wrap around those moms who are trying, who are just really on the verge. Obviously, like thinking through like a housing complex or creating job opportunities where education and mentorship and natural supports can be built. Those are obviously just very, very, very few ideas and things to kind of make your head think through. What are we doing? What are some additional resources? So I just kind of want to follow back up around with this one. As we're looking at the bottom one with transportation and with poverty, with food insecurities, what are some amazing community organizations that are already doing these things, and how could the organization that I work with help collaborate with them? So our final, as you're looking back over these things, like what education are you doing within your agency that maybe would allow somebody else in the community to learn from, and then therefore better support those that you're both working with? Trauma trainings or mandatory reporting, just really common good practices that we all could benefit from. So I'm opening it up right now to the floor. I'd like to hear your thoughts on all of that, questions. If you think this is any great ideas or it's kind of getting your brain going, if you don't know where to turn as far as different community resources that might benefit your agency or the work that you do. It's more of really just focusing on just the basics. Like, what are some little things that you could do, that I could do, that will really change the life of the kids and families that we work with and the individuals that we work with? Because honestly, when I really think of our community, I see so much potential, so many caring individuals. And I know that I've lived here for 15 years. And in the next 15 years, I want things to be better because we know better and we're going to do better. So how is this going to work together? Where do you guys see, when you look at those different slides, where some different collaborations could happen? Is there anybody in the chat box? You can unmute yourself. I love hearing other people talk besides myself.
We do have a comment in the chat.
Okay.
Something that is very important is identity in and with the community. People want to feel a sense of belonging, and before you can connect, one must need to identify what's currently the attitude.
Yeah. Do you want to unmute yourself? I'd love to hear a little bit more on that, like what your thoughts are on how, like some practical ways that someone might be able to really get engaged in the community.
I would say basically it starts with conversations, because you made a lot of great points, but being a therapist, you hear people feeling isolated. They don't feel a sense of belonging. And currently, with everything that's happening in the world today, it's even more of a separation. So I feel that the topics need to be discussed. You know, people's attitudes need to be changed, because one thing about old towns is that it has that nature, like, you know this person, but when you have new people who come in, they're sort of the outsider. They're not as welcome. So that creates those issues that you're seeing with kids, as far as like not really wanting to go to school, who they can hang out with, because people grew up together and it's like they already formed those bonds. But it's sort of the I don't know, diversity is huge and it needs to be incorporated. And I don't feel like there's enough topics or trainings that actually address those conversations that need. And there's an outpouring from people who like have so much I want to say, so much experiencing, and then it tends to feel lonely because they're like, where is a safe place to do that? Yeah. Where can we start talking about these topics? Who can I trust? Who can I identify with? Because everybody may not necessarily look like you. Mm-hmm. So the very real points that need to be, you know, I feel brought out more. And I could say that because, you know, I'm Black, and you get tired of going to trainings when you're the only person that looks like you. You have to ask the question, why is that? What's happening? Because it shouldn't be.
Yeah, I've actually heard that from several other of my friends who feel the same way that you do. So thank you for sharing that. And honestly, that has been something for me. I've been personally trying to do better with, and really just open up those conversations. And they might be awkward at first, but they have to happen. But it's very difficult to start those conversations. But thank you for even just sharing that. But it's hard to feel like part of a community when you always feel like the outsider. And that is super difficult. I know from my oldest son, he's struggled with that as well, because he and his wife are both Black, and they, as foster parents, have always been very isolated as well. They even get comments on people asking them if they have like kidnapped the child, if they have a white child in their home, or if they're babysitting. It's never actually like their child. So it can be a very isolating conversation. So thank you for bringing that up. And I would love to connect with you. There's some really great people in the community actually having those conversations right now. So you and I, if I can I give my email? Can I do that?
Yeah.
I'm going to throw my email in the chat box. So feel free to email me.
Great.
Great.
Hi, this is Jen Champy. I'm a school counselor. I can't see the chat box, so I'm wondering if you could share, like, just if you would be able to share it, or maybe it's in the invitation.
Yes.
I
Can
would
you send
appreciate it.
that? Amy, are you able to send that with the link via email?
Yeah, I'll do that.
Okay, thank you. As a school counselor, could
Thank
I ask you, do you see that if there's any ways to recommend to families that you clearly see are struggling, but maybe not at the point of calling children and youth? Are there any resources that you have found that are really great to help prevent kids from going into care?
So we have partnerships with the LIU, with their school-based team, and like for counseling, I think that's really helpful for families. I know we refer people to the food pantry. We have a food pantry. In fact, it's today. We're like a drive-through food pantry for helping with groceries and things like that. I think it's like just partnering with the different agencies. So we have a list of the agencies. I was wondering about this care portal. Is this like, so I'm not familiar with this care portal.
Yes, so that's the
And
organization.
I don't know if that's something that we could like put out requests for.
I would love to chat with you about that. What school district are you with?
So I'm at Wyoming area.
Okay, yes. Tell me your first name again.
Sure, it's Jennifer.
Jennifer.
Champy is my last name.
Can you spell your last name for me?
Sure, CIAMPI.
Okay, wonderful.
So I think just like I find myself a lot making referrals to, Children's Service Center or the school-based team. We have a SAP team. We have SAPE meetings for attendance issues.
Yeah.
I think transportation is a huge deal. I see we have a high population of free and reduced lunch, and I think there is a lot of those barriers that you talked about, and specifically transportation, where people can't follow through then with different services. So we try to provide them here at school a lot.
I have one more question for you, if you don't mind.
Sure.
As far as your education, as educating the staff, do you have a lot of resources available as far as trauma training or helping to identify kids that just really are having bad home lives, things like that? Do you have a lot of that? Because I know there's so much available, just working with Joe, the trauma trainings that are available. Do you do a lot of that with your staff?
Yes. So our whole staff, the whole district actually was just trauma trained with Joe, the 101, I think 102, 103 even in the spring in our in-service. So that was excellent.
That is awesome. I'm so happy to hear that. Good. Any other thoughts on here? What are some things that stood out to you that sound really great, but they're not practical? I'd love to hear those too. Or some things that you're like, wow, I really want to maybe try that, or there's a community partner that I'm thinking of that are doing great work in the same space and I want to connect with them. Anyways, I wasn't checking out the chat box. Is there anything else going in there, Amy?
Somebody said, I am in Wyoming County, and I know when I participated in interagency meeting during the quarantine, I was unaware of some of the resources available. I work in a school setting. Sometimes it is hard to know what is available or how to find those resources.
Yes, I just started working with Wyoming County, but actually I live in Wyoming County. We're just over the border, but I am not as familiar as probably Joe would be as for different resources, but I would love to, I'd love to connect with you as well too, and just hear how Wyoming County schools are and what work you're doing up there to kind of help support families and kids up there, in my backyard.